Facebook has a Pride React. Gay activism is trendy, and being queer is cool, sometimes. Face it, folks, we're getting gayer. Who let this happen?
Our top story tonight, Justin Trudeau, liberal hero for wearing pink.
The closet is emptying, and as the gays run wild in the streets, we have to ask, why now? What changed? Did the Pride React solve homophobia?
Way to go, Zuckerberg.
Join in on the conversation on Twitter and Facebook, and all together now, let's think about it. So are people getting gayer?
Yes.
Surveys by Gallup, GLAAD, Williams Institute, and your Aunt Linda all confirm that, yes, there are more gay people on the planet now than ever before. 1 in 5 millennials now identify as LGBTQ, compared to only 12% of Gen Xers or 7% of baby boomers. That's definitely gayer. And according to a survey conducted by the J. Walter Thompson Innovation Group, less than half of the Gen Z population identifies as completely straight. The reality is that, contrary to some interesting opinions about sexuality,
people, I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
People are not really getting gayer. They're just coming out more.
The same way Melissa was always a free bird, only now she's sharing part of herself with the world.
A big part of that has to do with more recent amendments to the law. Up until 1992...
I wasn't born yet.
This is so recent. Up until 1992, LGBTQ folks weren't seen as people in the eyes of the Canadian government, meaning that according to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, they were not protected from discrimination. Before 1992, if you had a donut shop and were like, no gays in here, that's chill.
Which sounds a bit like how every single goldfish dies. Look, Jimmy didn't feed it arsenic or anything, but he also just didn't feed it.
But since then, Canada has passed legislation that does actively protect queer folk, including legalizing gay marriage and anti-discriminatory laws. And yes, in that time, more LGBTQ people have come out of the closet.
Isn't that crazy? It's almost like it's easier to exist when your own government isn't trying to harm you. It's a little like how there seemed to be more alcohol just after Prohibition was lifted. Fancy that.
Keyword, seemed. Because, of course, there was still alcohol around during Prohibition. That's like the defining trait of Prohibition. There were still gay people around before Shuli was born. Their existence was just harder. What's great about legal strides for social justice issues is not only do they offer tangible evidence of turning cultural tides, but they themselves can sometimes be the catalyst. As GLAAD statistics show, discomfort and prejudice around homosexuality decreased drastically in the US in 2015. Likely because of the nationwide media coverage of the Supreme Court's legalization of gay marriage. And this is the crux of it all. The media has the power to change our future by how it reflects our present back to us. Yes, because of legislation, the world may be safer now for LGBTQ folks, but the media is doing the heavy lifting, not just in manufacturing acceptance, but also in striking realization.
It's like how most closeted teens didn't know they were closeted until Emily on Pretty Little Liars figured it out.
20% of millennials identify as LGBTQ. And as fun as it is to think about the sheer number of our beloved historical figures who must have been queer, maybe not all closets are the same.
Yeah, I know we'd like to all think Isaac Newton was bi. At least I may or may not have written fan fiction that ships him with Lord Byron.
But it's possible that the closet he was living in was not cramped. Maybe he was in some Kim Kardashian walk-in dream closet. Maybe he was in a closet so big he'd even know he was in the closet, like Narnia. Representation of LGBTQ people in the media helps the Isaac Newtons of today realize that they are in a giant spacious closet, like Melissa. The realization factor is probably encouraged by how many times viewers get to see the coming out plot.
Why are gay people always coming out on TV? Like, always. That is one small stage of a queer person's life, yet it's way overrepresented on television.
Probably because it is the best way for straight people to make LGBTQ stories all about them.
No, but for real, you'd think the entirety of gay people's lives is coming out. Come out, then it's over.
AKA the Ellen DeGeneres story. I know we're all still sad about Ellen's sitcom being canceled, but it is worth talking about how frequently that happens. A character comes out and then dies. Queer characters, especially queer women, especially happy queer women, die all the time on TV. Introducing the bury your gays trope. 35 queer women characters died on TV last year.
It's like all TV writers are using their lesbian characters to play a big game of fuck, marry, kill, in that order, and the marry part is new.
It is hard to imagine the future. We often rely on media to do it for us. Look, flying cars are not practical. They are terrible for the environment and would make regulating traffic impossible. Yet nerds are still obsessed with making them. Why? Because years ago, writers told them that the future would have flying cars, and we cannot seem to get over that. Build it, and they will come. Which is why, if we want a future where life as a member of the LGBTQ community is just as easy as life outside it, then it must be projected in our media. 35 stories where queer women die is too many. If writers are going to continue to push stories where queer characters meet tragic demises for character development, that's fine. But it's time writers are held accountable for their choices. If they're gonna continue to kill LGBTQ characters at this rate, then I, frankly, think it's time for more gay ghosts.
Hashtag more gay ghosts.
And really, bury your gays is only one problem currently present in the LGBTQ representation.
According to GLAAD, 4.8% of TV characters in 2016 were part of the LGBTQ community, which may seem like a lot, but it's only marginally more than the 4.3% of TV characters who were members of the undead community. Of course, some representation is better than no representation, but it'd be swell to get that number closer to reality, where queer people outnumbered the undead by an estimated 40%.
Also, could some of those characters please not be cis, white, and homosexual? Believe it or not, there's some diversity to LGBTQ IRL. Why is it that execs are so hard for shows about white men with mild depression coping with being an adult at age 40? But like, getting a queer character of color on TV can't happen without a dozen think pieces getting published. I mean, art is supposed to reflect life, or at least offer some idyllic escapism. I could go on and on about all the flaws in the media's...
Okay, but if we could return to the original question.
Are people getting gayer?
Yes.
Yes, they are.
Right, but you say it like it's an obvious thing that everyone knows.
Sort of is.
Believe it or not, I'm actually not trying to argue with you here. My point is exactly that everyone seems to know the world is getting gayer. The majority of people in the United States in 2016, when asked, guessed that the population was around 10% queer, an 8-fold increase of what it was 20 years ago. When in actuality, different surveys put LGBTQ folks at around 3% of the total population. Over 90% of respondents of all ages, regions, and sexual orientations overestimated how gay people really were. Many by a long shot. A quarter of respondents estimated that a quarter of the American population was LGBTQ. Reminder, the actual figures are close to 3%. So we've already talked about the media shaping public perception, but even then, only 4% of characters are queer. So what gives? Why are these numbers so grossly overestimated?
I'm sure at least a little bit of it comes from the infamous liberal bubble.
But it's probably more closely aligned with similar overestimations of illegal American residents or those who've actually entered the country illegally, which is, according to Wall Street Journal, 6 or 7-fold the actual statistics. It's human behavior to perceive a threat as being larger than it actually is. While we're on that, actually, only 6% of people pour milk before their cereal. So y'all can just frost your own flakes, okay?
6%? That's a lot.
You're a lot.
Well, what's your point with all this?
Well, you're going on and on about the power of the media and our perception of reality, but also calling for more LGBTQ representation. So I thought I'd play a little devil's advocate on why that's maybe not the best idea if the goal is to create a more tolerant world.
That's fair. To be clear then, I'm not demanding more LGBTQ representation, at least not just more representation. I'm demanding that we all hold creators accountable for creating better representations. Let's see characters coming from diverse backgrounds, heading towards, if not happy, at least endings where they, remain alive. And most importantly, the San Junipero episode of Black Mirror and the Thanksgiving episode of Master or None are both streaming on Netflix and both won Emmys. Because I do agree with what you're saying, Shuli. Your Aunt Linda may only think the world is getting gayer because she feels suffocated by the queer...
That's my kink.
Oh my God.
Don't kink shame me.
But the best way to combat fear of the other is not to hide, but rather to show them. Show them often, show them positively, and show them as people. Let's build a better world with less Aunt Lindas, so the hypothetically bi Isaac Newtons of today can finally come out of their Narnia-sized closets. And next time you're asked to accept Riverdale's queer representation as enough, maybe take a second and think about it.